Good afternoon. Good afternoon. We'll wait a moment until the slides magically appear, hopefully. I'm going to be talking about education, not sustainability directly, but any aspect of sustainability is contingent upon education, because if we are not educating ourselves and more importantly children, things are not going to get better in the future. And so that is probably a different angle than most of the papers you've heard up to this point in time. That's not me. Yeah, I'm not sure I could give that talk, but there we go. That looks like my slide. And so the reason, as I said, I'm going to be talking about education is because it is truly a foundation for anything that we want to do to address sustainability or to address the challenges that we face in our world. It is the foundation of anything that we want to do to make our world a better place. Okay, so I think I can advance my own slides, theoretically. Or not? Okay, what did I do? I don't know what I've done. Okay, there we go. And so if we look at the United Nations goals, number 4 is quality education. And so this is something that clearly has been documented as being important, but the COVID-19 pandemic really elevated the concerns around access to education and around the quality of education that children can have access to. When we think about education, that educated citizenry is truly a foundation and probably the most important asset for any nation. When we think about education, it contributes to all facets of government, economy, business, industry, health and well-being, to education, starting from early childhood education. Oftentimes we tend to think of higher education, college, university, as being the most important, but I would argue when we're really trying to understand the ways that education can contribute to our countries, we really need to invest in early childhood education, because most of the brain development, the language development, even the moral development occurs in children from birth to age 5. So by investing in early childhood education, we can really help build that foundation. In addition to that, when we're thinking about education, we also need to be thinking about individuals who have special needs. We need to be thinking about individuals who learn differently or who need different kinds of support, as well as thinking about general education for the masses. Our countries are also benefited in terms of human services as well as sustainability by having an educated citizenry. So when we think about education, I will admit I'm a teacher educator. So I started as an elementary and a middle school teacher, and then I've been a teacher educator for about 25 years now. And the preparation of high quality teachers truly matters, and research indicates that the single biggest predictor of school outcomes for students is the quality of the teacher in the classroom. And so the effort and energy and investment that we make in preparing highly qualified teachers pays enormous dividends for our students, not only the students, but for their families and for our communities. And so today I'm going to talk very briefly about a model for preparing teachers based in the community, and then talk about the importance of providing ongoing professional development to support teachers and help them continue to enhance their practice, to stay current, and to be able to become increasingly effective across their careers. A vital tool in all of this, in both the preparation of teachers and professional development, is technology. One of the silver linings of the pandemic, I think, is that we have learned that technology can be used in different ways than we thought pre-pandemic. Thinking about the ways that we're preparing teachers, thinking about the ways that we can make programs accessible to individuals who might be too far from a college or university campus, thinking about the ways that we supervise our student teachers and our clinical students when they're out practicing their craft and learning to become teachers, and doing that remotely provides a very accessible way to, again, provide teacher education support and opportunities in remote areas. We struggle in the state of Illinois and some of our rural areas of providing teacher education experiences for students who might live 3 or 4 hours from a college or university campus. And so by being able to leverage technology, we've been able to provide opportunities to them. And then also that ongoing professional development. So once teachers are done, I always tell them, congratulations, you are at the top of your game. You are current, you understand the best practices, you understand the current research on teaching and learning, and you know what, tomorrow there's going to be new stuff to learn. You are never done becoming a teacher. So that ongoing professional development is vital. And one of the models that we've seen in research that's particularly effective is called coaching. And in a coaching model, a peer teacher who might be more experienced, or sometimes in a school you might have someone who serves as a coach and their job is just to support teachers and go into the classroom and give them assistance, to model for them, to provide feedback, to observe them, to co-teach with them, and to really help them engage in thinking about solving their problems of practice. So I'm going to talk a little bit about a model that we've developed at Northern Illinois University and some of the research behind it, as well as some of the research outcomes from implementing the model. This model focuses on preparing teachers from the community for the community, and these are some of our students who are preparing to be teachers through our program called PLEDGE. And PLEDGE stands for Partnering to Lead and Empower District-Grown Educators. Basically what we do in this particular model is we work with partners to figure out what their needs are for teachers. We're experiencing a teacher shortage in many parts of the U.S., and it's very acute in some areas. It's very acute in areas like special education, early childhood education, some of the STEM fields in high school. We're having great difficulty preparing teachers for all of those areas, especially in rural places. And so as we think about this model, PLEDGE, some of the key components that underlie it are a developmental view of becoming a teacher. We really believe from the beginning of the program, teachers need to have an opportunity to have aligned coursework to clinical practice, so that what they're learning in the classroom, they're experiencing and applying it in a classroom with real kids, because that's really where it boils down to making sense, is can they apply it, can they use it. We are using something that's called a Grow Your Own Teachers model. A Grow Your Own Teachers model means that it's based in the community, that you're working with community partners and organizations and agencies, and that you're providing a residency, which means you're providing that extended clinical practice opportunity for teachers to learn their craft with real kids in real classrooms. Another component of our model is that we're really thinking about cultural capital that our teacher candidates bring to the table, so to speak. And so that photograph that I showed you, those are basically what you would consider non-traditional students. Most of them were individuals who we would consider adult learners. Many of them are parents. Many of them live and work in the community. Maybe they work in the school in the cafeteria, or they work in the school in the office, or they work in the school as a teacher's aide. But we oftentimes don't think about those kinds of individuals as making great teachers, but I would argue those are exactly the people who make great teachers. Yaso's model of cultural capital really looks at it from a wealth perspective and thinks about all of the things that these teacher candidates bring to the table that allow them to learn and engage and become great teachers, and more importantly, once they get into the classroom, to understand the assets that their students bring, so that they can take their students' lived experiences, their backgrounds, their cultural and familial assets, and leverage those for teaching and learning. So within this community cultural model, aspirational capital refers to the aspirations, the goals, the vision, the dreams that these teacher candidates bring to their education programs. Familial capital is just what it sounds like. The expertise, the experiences, the knowledges that they bring from their families. Resistant capital is an interesting one. This really focuses in on that idea of teacher candidates being advocates for their students and sometimes resisting the status quo, or resisting approaches to education or ways of looking at students that might be deficit-based and could have negative impact on students. Linguistic capital, embracing the idea idea of being multilingual is vital, is critical. Many of the teachers in the photograph that I shared with you are bilingual, and that was one of the key goals of the community, was to be able to grow more bilingual teachers. And I know that for many of you, we're looking at not only multiple languages, but multiple dialects. And so by identifying teacher candidates who have those languages and dialects, they can bring that linguistic capital to the teaching and learning. Navigational capital is oftentimes developed in a teacher ed program, learning how to navigate the program, how to work through schools, how to navigate the resources and the expectations, the assessments, the requirements. And then social capital is just what it sounds like, that ability to network, to work with other people, to be able to communicate, to be able to leverage all of that for your teaching and learning. When we talk about an asset-based approach to teacher education, two of the key components that are really vital in our program are funds of knowledge and funds of identity. Funds of knowledge refer back to many of the things that I talked about in Yaso's model of cultural capital. And funds of knowledge are the things that the assets that the learner brings to the learning experience. So it's their lived experiences, their ways of knowing things, their family traditions, their experiences. And then funds of identity are the ways that the learner sees themselves. You know, does the learner see themselves as successful? Do they see themselves as an artist? Do they see themselves as friendly? Do they see themselves as creative? Do they see themselves as bookish? And so those funds of identity are critical, because when we know what those are, we can make sure that we're providing teacher education that supports the individual teacher candidates to become the best teachers that they can. And so within our pledge model, it's really built on partnerships. The way that it works for us is that we work with community colleges that are distributed across the state of Illinois. There's 48 of them, so they're pretty geographically distributed. And many times our teacher candidates come to us from those community colleges where they've completed part of their degree. They work with us at the university, we partner with schools, and we also work with community organizations and leaders, because they are vital, because we are growing teachers not for the university, but we are growing them for the community. So with all of those partners, we engage in a lot of collaborative goal setting. The first thing is focusing on what is the teacher preparation program going to address. In the case of some of the photos that I shared with you, we're preparing special educators, or we're preparing early childhood teachers, or we're preparing, in some cases, even principals. So finding out and determining what the focus of the program is going to be. What are the resources to support the program? Many of these teacher candidates have great assets, but they have very limited financial resources. So we're always thinking about ways to not only provide scholarships, but to provide other resources like childcare, transportation, money for books, money for other living expenses that are vital for the teacher candidate to be able to complete their program. The recruitment of teacher candidates to meet the community needs is really where the community resources come in play, because those are the people who are on the ground, who know people, who understand, you know, people who might be interested in going into teaching, who might make great teachers. We also need to work collaboratively to identify the clinical placements and supervision, to identify the kinds of barriers that teacher candidates might experience, as well as to develop potential solutions, and then to develop strategies for success. So I want to talk about some of the findings that we've had from the last 2 years in implementing this model. So we have found that indeed our teacher candidates have brought rich cultural capital, a passion for learning, and also a passion for not only teaching, but their community. They want to stay in their community. They want to teach in their community. They want to give back to their community. Many of them cite that there were teachers in their lives who were particularly influential and inspirational, and many of them want to be that person for the next generation of students. We also have found in our program that a cohort-based model provides a lot of peer support, and that it is very helpful in sustaining through a program, especially for individuals who are, you know, navigating a lot of responsibilities in life. In our model, the teacher and faculty candidate relationships really seemed to be uniquely built on acceptance and candidates' needs and investment in their success. We saw a great deal of flexibility in our faculty supporting these cohorts. When students would say, you know, we're having a hard time balancing work and school, can we adjust these deadlines? We're having difficulty with this assignment, can we get access to additional resources? And we found that the professors in the program were very invested because many of them came from the same communities where we were preparing the teachers. So we're really thinking about that grow your own, investing in that community. A couple of our other findings focused on the support networks or the safety nets that were provided for teacher candidates. We had support for them, like I said, in terms of childcare, in terms of funding, in terms of resources like tutoring in the state of Illinois. There's tests that you have to pass to become a teacher and other important requirements that sometimes require additional assistance or support or tutoring, and we were able to provide those for them. We also found that our program, in the research that we collected, our program participants really found that they developed a sense of belonging, and that sense of belonging enhanced their commitment to not only completing the program, but to becoming a teacher. And that sense of belonging helped sustain them in the hard times and helped sustain one another in hard times. I'll share a story. We had one student who was 9 months pregnant when her student teaching began. And so she needed a different schedule, and so her cooperating teacher and her supervisor worked with her to develop a different schedule, to identify the skills she had already demonstrated, to adjust her student teaching so she could still meet the requirements, but that she could take the time off that she needed after the birth of her child. And she also talked about her classmates and how helpful they were in encouraging her and supporting her and keeping her caught up. So that program support and peer support really came together. So when we think about a model like pledge and sustainability, I want to talk about some of the key components that I think are important takeaways. One of them is that teacher education becomes sustainable, that we're creating a sustainable pipeline of individuals across our communities who are ready and interested and willing to teach there because that is their destination. They want to be teaching in their communities. They're going to be long-term members of the community, and they're going to be long-term contributors to the success of generations of children in their classrooms. We also have found that community-centered teachers are retained at a much higher rate than other teachers. And so instead of, recruiting teachers from other areas and they come and they stay for a couple of years and then they want to move back to where home is for them, or they want to move because of other situations, we're finding that in this community-based model, the teachers want to stay there because that is where they are from. We also have found that principals and other education leaders can be grown from those community-centered teachers, which has been exciting to see those individuals throughout their career take on more responsibility, but do it in the home community where they are rooted and where they are most committed. And we also find that well-prepared teachers can create generations of well-educated and informed citizens. So let me share just a little bit of data from our 2-year study of the pledge model. So far, we've prepared 109 elementary education teachers in this model, 31 school principals, and 52 special education teachers. And this next part is shocking for anyone who is in teacher education. I'm not sure how many are in the room, but it is quite shocking that we've had 100% on-time graduation rate of all of those individuals, and 100% have been hired and retained in the partner schools. And so they not only completed the program, but they taught in those schools where they were, desiring to teach. And so we're very excited about that. But once we prepare them, as I said earlier, we need to make sure that we're providing ongoing professional development to support them throughout their careers. So, a quick conceptual model that we like to use when we're thinking about teacher professional development is this particular one by Desimone that identifies the core features of professional development being things that you would expect, but things that we oftentimes don't do. We think teachers are done. They should be able to figure it out as they go. But new things are developing, the curriculum is changing, the world is changing, new knowledge is being generated. And so we need to make sure that our professional development for teachers has a content focus so that they're getting the key content that they need, that it also engages in active learning. So teachers aren't just sitting and listening, but they're doing, they're applying, they're using what they're learning. That there's coherence, meaning that what we're teaching in professional development connects to the curriculum and the expectations in our schools. The duration. Many times we think one workshop is sufficient, but research indicates it is not. So the duration, we're much better when we're getting into a situation where we're engaging teachers in professional development for at least 3 months or more, because that repeated exposure and application and deepening of knowledge and reflection and application really allows them to gain understanding of what they're learning and to be able to apply it to their practice. When we also have collective participation, where teachers are coming together, so I'm not doing this alone, I'm engaged in this with my peers. When that happens, we have increased teacher knowledge, skills, we even have changes in attitudes and beliefs that can come about from high quality, coherent professional development. That can lead to changes in teacher instruction, which can lead to improved student learning, which is always ultimately the goal that we have when we engage in any kind of professional development. And so when we're thinking about professional development, these are just a few key considerations that can be helpful to ensure that the professional development that we're providing will make a difference and will actually contribute to teacher preparation. So as I mentioned before, it needs to be ongoing. Job embedded, meaning that the teachers are able to apply and to use what they're learning in their own classrooms, that it's relevant, that it's applicable, so that they can practice their craft. When we learn anything new, the best way to learn it is to practice it in the way that we're going to use it. In addition to that, professional development for teachers always needs to be focused on student learning, because that's what it's about. It's not about teacher performance, but it's about what teachers do to support student learning. In addition to that, I mentioned a coaching model briefly before that is highly advocated for good quality professional development. Professional learning communities are another way of thinking about professional development that brings the teachers together and they share what they're learning. Sometimes they're sharing and reading a book or an article and then talking about how to apply that in their classrooms, or they're analyzing data. But it's the teachers coming together to learn from and with one another in a professional learning community. And then also, as I mentioned earlier, leveraging technology. So the professional development can be facilitated digitally. It can be facilitated to bring people together who are in very different geographic areas, for example. And so when we're thinking about that ongoing professional development, again, the key goal is it can contribute to instruction, which leads to improved learning for students. So with all of that in mind, thank you for listening, and I look forward to an opportunity to answer any questions that you might have about anything I shared or about anything related to the preparation of teachers and the role that it plays in promoting sustainability.